Maralee Burnett. I am your astrologer, back with the messages for the week of September 8th, which sees us just after the full moon lunar eclipse in the sign of Pisces. So we are still understanding all of that impact of that energy, understanding what we have to let go of, what we're releasing, what emotional blocks have been keeping us stuck, and how closing those doors, how letting these things go are opening the path to our future. We're going to talk about that and more as we go through the energy of this week, because there's a lot of activity still with the North and South Node. So our lessons are not over. There's a reason why we have the eclipses within 2 weeks of each other, because they are a continuing storyline that's likely already been in progress for you. And now you're just seeing where the story was headed. Of course, you may know all of that because you've already been following me. And if not, you want to click on that subscribe button now so that you make sure you get notified every time I post new content, which is every weekend, as well as every day, where you can tune in and see a tarot card message that I pull every day. And in that messaging, I usually give you a little tidbit about what's also going on as far as the astrological energy is going. And for more day-to-day guidance, go out to my website, maraleeburnett.com. That's where all my written content is. You can look at September and October monthly horoscopes, where you get the breakdown day by day, as well as the new moon and the full moon articles. And November will follow shortly, as I like to get us ready for that month. It's a big transition month as well. So consider also coming to work with me. I do have eclipse special pricing, so we can just focus in. And I still think it's worthwhile to look at what's going on with the lunar eclipse and the upcoming intense solar eclipse that will be at 29 degrees. So whenever planets go across a 29 degree, they bring intensity. It's a test of some type. And so when you have a new moon that's testing us, it's a big deal. So we're going to talk about that next week, but we'll get a little preview this week, as we usually do the next week conversation at the end of this current video. So all the energy is intense. In fact, the universe said they didn't like my first vision for this next week, and it made me record it again. So the original recording was eclipsed out so I could do it again and do it better, I guess. So, man, if I could just pay attention to detail and make sure, the light is on the microphone, that would be really, really helpful. But instead, I get to do this again for all of you. Of course, you've only seen it the first time, so you will think it's fabulous from beginning to end, regardless of the rework that I had to do. And it's not even Mercury retrograde, but when you have an eclipse that's going on and impacting the sign of Virgo, it's just a good reminder to pay close attention to the details. So speaking of details, let us get started here on Monday, September 8th, and focus in on what we can expect from today's energy. Now, I do expect it to be a very emotional day. We will see the moon still in the sign of Pisces for part of the day, and it will be speaking with Saturn at 29 degrees. So Saturn has just dipped back into the 29 degree. There is some sort of test showing up, especially for anybody who has planets at 29 degrees. And Saturn may give you an intense lesson that you want to make sure that you learn, and that you then pass the test that comes along with that lesson. Now, the moon, of course, is very emotional. It is very charged up from the eclipse event, and it is needing a refresh, a restart, now that it is clear of that eclipse moment, and it has a fresh perspective for all of us, from an emotional perspective, from a faith perspective, and we now can get some control over our emotions so that we can respond more strongly and forthright. Because as the day progresses, of course, the moon is going to pass through talking with Neptune here in the sign of Aries, also retrograde. And that is strong, independent, individual way of thinking and feeling and continuing to decide what the dream, what the vision is for our future. So some of the lessons from this eclipse are going, of course, to show up through the moon over the next 2 weeks as it travels from Pisces to the sign of Virgo. Of course, the opposing sign where we'll have that intense 29-degree new moon solar eclipse. So it's so important. If you don't journal, this might be a good time to just say, for the next 2 weeks, I am going to journal. I am going to tune into my intuition. I'm going to pay attention to my guides, to my downloads, and make sure I'm understanding the work. Because this is fate. This is destiny. This is the North Node, where we're headed. This is the South Node, where we've been, where we're stuck, where we need to be released. That journey will show up for you through the moon, because, of course, the moon touches both of these events, first in fullness at the full moon lunar eclipse, and then as a blank slate. But there was that eclipse moment where the moon too appeared to be a blank slate. So these stories are connected. The work is connected. Destiny and fate are working to align us to the work ahead, to the path that we have in front of us. So tune in to your emotional experiences over these next 2 weeks, and that will help you be completely prepared for that maybe shocking event that will be that new moon solar eclipse in Virgo. So that is where we start on Monday, and then just some reminders of energy that is ongoing for us, which is Pluto in the sign of Aquarius retrograde. It'll be here till October, and then it'll start helping us move forward, bringing the people together, creating change through the people, through our connections. And then, as I've mentioned, they're still speaking in harmony with this Saturn Neptune energy. They'll join together here in the sign of Pisces shortly. So you get some time to feel independent of Neptune, what Saturn wants you to learn and understand from the past 3 years. That's how long Saturn's been going through the sign of Pisces. So we're being tested. This could be a test that ties back to March, April of this year. And we want to make sure that we've understood the work, that we're doing the work. And if we're not, then this is our time. Pay attention to our intuition and make the necessary adjustments. And then it's later, and we'll talk about it next week, that Neptune comes back here and asks you the same question. This is final work. The Pisces energy is final. It's why it's connected to the spirit world. It's the end of what we know and the beginning of what we don't. The beginning of what is unseen. That is where we have to have faith and trust the process. So we'll talk about that a little bit more next week. And then last, of course, we have Uranus now retrograde, which has just turned retrograde in the past week. And as it did, boy, did things get crazy. All the stuff with Donald Trump. And if you followed me, I had mentioned I thought something would be going on with him during the eclipse because of the intense pressure on his chart energetically. And boy, did things get crazy. And the conversations were crazy, right? So Gemini energy is conversations. Uranus is wild, crazy ideas. And boy, were they flying around the internet last week. So now things will be less crazy because this Uranus energy is starting to settle into its retrograde motion. But it takes almost 5.5 months for this whole story to unfold. And later this year, it will also step back into Taurus for the final work we have to do there as well. So they're all working together still in harmony behind the scenes, these outer planets that are creating collective change. And we don't know what it is yet. It's not our privy to know. But a story is unfolding. And as we have big events, like them changing directions, like these eclipses, we're getting a brief glimpse into what is about to change. Slowly but surely. And then last week, we also talked about the fact that Jupiter was having conversations with the nodes and giving them instructions on this destined change and path. And also the nodes showing Jupiter how to learn the lessons so that growth can happen for us. And that growth is in the sign of Cancer. So we need to care more for one another. This is not about attacking each other. This is about providing food, providing protection like a mother would to her children. There is a big change needed in the direction that we're currently going with the wars and the fighting, right? That's very Capricornian type of energy. This is about more love that's needed and taking care of one another instead of fighting with one another. So this is a story that's been unfolding since last July when the nodes first entered here. And here's a chapter that is going to unfold and a lesson that will be taught to the collective and us as individuals. So the storyline continues this week. Jupiter is going to be handing out wise guidance as it talks to several of the planets this week. And I would suggest that you take the guidance and apply it with love. That is going to reward you in a big way this week. All right, so let's take a look at what that looks like as we head here into Tuesday. We're always going to see this minor triangle with those collective outer planets working together. That's not going to change. Then we do see, though, today that Venus is now going to be in conjunct, this green energy, back to the North Node. And so that is love, that is children, that is leadership, and that is women that are fighting against lies. That's probably one of the easiest way to put that. And so those lies are getting exposed and the truth is coming out. And you just might find that there are women who are championing the truth that you wouldn't expect to be the warriors, the ones that are stepping up into a leadership role. But it's part of their destined path to do so, even though it's strange and awkward. And Leo energy is very forthright, right? It's a lion. Pisces energy is a fish, right? It's gentle and it's in the water. This fire and water energy, they don't get along, right? Water wants to put out the fire. Fire wants to burn so hot the water can't touch it. They don't know how to work together because there's really not a way unless fire creates its own space and can be surrounded by the water and still allowed to be itself. But there's like a safety net so this situation doesn't burn too hot. So it's not normal, right? You don't normally see fire surrounded by water. But there is something like that is unfolding for us on Tuesday. And it may have been showing up last week because it is a part of the eclipse storyline that, of course, as I mentioned, will unfold over these next 2 weeks. So look for some odd things going on with women, maybe with women and children, and this fated lesson that is all about telling the truth. And we saw a little bit of this last week with the Epstein victims coming together and having their message and demanding to be heard. So my guess is there will be more drama, which is Leo, around that event and what continues to unfold as a result of it. We shall see. So that is the biggest energy going on Tuesday. As we transition here into Wednesday, we now see the Sun conjunct exactly with the South Node. And Mercury is at the point that the Sun was during the eclipse. So again, the Sun is highlighting the eclipse point, but this time through Mercury, which is children, childish energy. It is the details about the children that are coming to the surface. These are details that are being released, and this work, this information, maybe this leader who has to step down because of details being exposed about their health, details being exposed about how they got into their leadership role and shouldn't have. There's all kinds of ways that this can show up. But the biggest thing when you're working with fate, obviously, is you don't expect what's coming up. It can be shocking. And the Sun's the one highlighting the information, as Mercury and the Sun will get closer and closer together until we have Mercury Cazimi, which will really shock us with the information and details that the South Node is exposing. Information and details from the past. So we are starting to see that show up for us on Wednesday. And again, it's a part of this whole journey over these next 2 weeks, trying to get us to lean into faith, into spirit, and to start controlling the truth, stop controlling the details, and allow those things to flow, those things to be released. So again, we're probably talking about Epstein files, secrets and deceptions that have been hidden for a number of years that are now being exposed. So be prepared for a little shock and awe show going on all week long as a result of this energy being in pretty much constant motion this entire week. Then as we move on into Thursday, I mentioned if you show up and do the work, you will be blessed. And that, again, like I said, is because Jupiter was speaking in harmony exactly with the nodes during the lunar eclipse. And now it is speaking exactly in harmony with the Sun, as it's just past the South Node, right? So the Sun's shown you what you need to know or learn about the past. And now, as a result of doing its work, exposing the truth, there is a reward from Jupiter for doing that. So this can be a person who steps up and finally says, I'm willing to face and take responsibility for these things that I did that were wrong. And as a result of that, the person will be heralded. They will be revered and respected and in some ways forgiven for their transgressions. In our own lives, whatever 2 houses you have this energy happening in is where the blessings come in for you. So if you're this person, this is some kind of rewarding job, a growth opportunity from your career because of the fact that Jupiter's in the 10th house, which is career and status, and the Sun shines light in the 12th house, which could be a large institution, a health organization. For instance, if you work for one and this is your chart, you're a Libra rising, then you have a new opportunity, especially because the 6th house work, day-to-day life, has that North Node there. But it required you to take a leap of faith and make a big change as far as your career goes. But because you took the leap of faith, here's your reward. And Jupiter can be financial in rewards. So this can be very beneficial to those of you who are in positions where they care and nurture for other people. So that's some really good, feel good energy that I would like to be a part of. So, but most of us who have any energies around these middle degrees, those are the ones who are feeling this work more intensely than others. So some will say, it was eclipse, nothing happened, big deal. That's likely because you didn't have any of your personal planets that were being directly impacted, but you can still be impacted what's going on collectively, which then also can create a change in your life. So there's no guarantees, but the people who have planets aligned and are directly interacting with the eclipse energy are noticing. Even a generation may notice, as I talked last week, because that Virgo energy from the 60s is being highlighted with the Pluto and Uranus conjunction at the time of that lunar eclipse. So that is Thursday. It's 9/11. So, of course, it's a day of remembrance here for the tragedies that happened across the country from those attacks. So, again, lead with love, because attacks can happen any day. But if we stay in that mode of being a victim, then we'll continue to be victimized. But when, like these women did from their experience with Epstein, banded together and stood up, there is healing that can happen for them. So it's a lot of, again, there was a huge leap of faith for them to stand up and show their face. And our sexuality and abuse it's terrifying. So knowing that they had the strength to come together, my guess is, because of course the lunar eclipse exposes the truth, they will be rewarded for taking that leap of faith and finally feel like they've been heard. And they're trying to create change. So this situation can't ever happen again. So you can't not want that for them. And if you do, I'm sorry, we're going to definitely agree to disagree on that topic, but that's the right thing to do for them right now, is to support them in their journey. And I think that, like I said, we're going to see something positive, which new legislation would be as a result of this act of bravery from them. So that is Thursday. And as we move into Friday, as I mentioned, now we are seeing this energy of Mercury speaking directly with the South Node. So while you don't see it in my view, you'll see between Thursday and Friday more information, more secrets being revealed, more details being exposed, and the things that happen are fated as Mercury with the South Node is releasing information from the past that will help guide us towards our future. As a collective and as individuals, we are seeing that happen, and it's necessary. But the details cannot remain secretive or hidden any longer as it relates to a particular topic in your own life as well. And like I mentioned, maybe it ties back to something that you were a part of in 2006. This is that 19-year chapter. That's how long it takes the nodes to travel around. That is being closed out. Something similar, but not exactly the same, is coming up for you at this time. Trust the process. That's all I can say. You can't control outcomes right now. The more you try to control outcomes, the more you will delay what's meant for you, and you don't want to delay it. Trust me. Do not hang on to something that isn't meant for you, because what's meant for you right now while we have this activity is fated. So it should be coming to you somewhat easily once you release the anxiety attached to whatever it is you had to let go. So let it go. and let this new thing come in for you without regret, without sorrow. Let it go and trust the process. So there's something about that, the details, the information that you need to learn about why it's okay to let whatever this is go will come to you on Friday. We also see, because Mercury is speaking in harmony with Jupiter, that whatever the information is, it's big. It's big, it's heartfelt, and it's healing, because Virgo is a healing sign. So the information that we do learn today is meant to heal us. It's meant to heal us from the past and open a door going forward for us. All right. That is what we have to talk about for Friday. And then as we move into Saturday, this is where we have Mercury Cazimi. And I feel like this is more mind-blowing aha than usual because of the fact the next time we have Mercury Cazimi is in November. And it's when Mercury will be in the sign of Scorpio, and it will be retrograde with the new moon. So it's a new moon Cazimi. So this, to me, is a preview of whatever comes up in November in order for that new beginning to unfold. First, we have to have this mind-blowing event, this rebirth, right? Every time Mercury talks with the sun, it's reborn. And so this can have things to do with health. This can have things to do with a leader's health. And this could have things to do with a leader's health that's been hidden beneath the surface. Maybe a leader that's fallen out of the spotlight lately that we haven't even been paying attention to because of all the other chaos that's been going on. And suddenly their health will become a part of the news cycle. So yes, of course, we just had a crazy news cycle that it was involving Trump, which I talked about last week because of the fact that the T-square from this eclipse was impacting his Uranus energy in the sign of Gemini. Well, Uranus in the sign of Gemini is crazy information. And the information got really crazy because of the fact that when Uranus changes directions, the crazy gets bigger and erratic and unexpected. And boy, was that a show through the media, which of course is that Gemini energy of the news and information, which Mercury rules over, right? The sign of Gemini and here in the sign of Virgo. So there's something about the details, the information, health information that we think we know, but we don't. And suddenly with the sun spotlight on Mercury and the details, what we learn can, as usual, be a bit mind-blowing. Now, for some people, this can make you feel a bit anxious. So always know to do your grounding exercises and work on your subconscious mind, your subconscious thinking, because again, the North Node in Pisces is teaching us how to rewrite the script from our subconscious mind so that we can be healthier. So there's something about that work today through this lens of Mercury in the sign of Virgo that makes us very, very aware of all the details and all the information that's been holding us back, South Node in Virgo. And once we learn it, once we see the truth, we can't ignore it any longer. So look for Saturday to be very impactful. Make a note about whatever's showing up for you, what downloads you're getting. And even if you don't fully understand them now in the moment, trust me, by that November Cazimi new moon, you're going to know all the details and all the information. And it is going to create an incredible transformation, starting over a complete renewal somewhere in your life, wherever you have that 26 to 28 degrees of Scorpio energy in your chart is going to be the most impacted by change. So this is just the beginning of it, I believe. Time will tell, as it usually does. So that is Saturday. And then as we head on in here to Sunday, we're finishing out the week with some more harmonious energy. So here we have the lovers of the zodiac, which is Venus in Leo. Love, passion, fun, joy. Speaking in harmony with Mars, it happens to be in her home sign of Libra. Fighting for fairness, fighting for balance, fighting for justice. And they both will speak in harmony for a bit on Sunday with the moon in Gemini. So there can be some peace talks today, some efforts to negotiate and to resolve some conflict that's been going on. Because at the same time as the moon speaks in harmony with Venus and Mars, it is squaring off with Mercury and the Sun. So this is the first quarter moon. And at the first quarter moon, that is when we have a chance to look at what we wanted from the full moon lunar eclipse and what we have to start changing. So it isn't just going to happen. There are things that we're going to have to change our mind about. We have to look at the information, feel and trust it with our intuition, and change. And when we make the change, that's when we can renegotiate something with other people that we have been in conflict with and come up with a peace plan going forward. All right. That sounds like a pretty big, powerful way to end off on our Sunday. So let's take a quick peek at next week's energy. And you're going to notice next week that we see this continued conversation, this continued cooperation between men and women that are trying to correct some pain that an individual caused in the past. So will this have to do with the Jeffrey Epstein situation and the men and women in Congress coming together? Maybe, but it doesn't have to be just that big storyline in your own life, but there is some conflict that's been going on in your life, a pain from the past, that a wound that you carry, that these two energies working together in partnership and harmony can help you do some healing. But there will be conflicts. There will be those that don't want to see this alliance succeed and can attack it, literally. So it's a good week to be safe whenever we have Chiron and Mars in a confrontation with one another. That is where things can be caught up in harm's way. So just be careful. And of course, we're also going to see a weird connection between the Sun, Mercury, and Chiron. So there is definitely something coming up next week that has to do with the illness of a leader. That is going to surprise us for sure. All right. So that's just a few things. And then as we progress through the week, this is all of the energy next week that leads us up. And as you can look, it's pretty intense as it moves on until we get to this, as I mentioned, new moon solar eclipse that will happen at 29 degrees next Sunday in the sign of Virgo, opposing Saturn and Neptune. It's going to be intense. There is a big lesson. It's very karmic in nature because of the involvement of Saturn in Pisces. So something about the last 3 years that it's coming up for a grade. While we have Mars at another intense 29 degrees. So we'll come back next week. Of course, if you've subscribed and you get notification when this posts, you will definitely want to show up next week as well as we unravel this. But again, as I mentioned, you can book a session with me. You can go out and start reading what all the rest of the month of September has in store. Go read October. We're just in an intense energy cycle, but it's leading us somewhere purposeful. We just have to show up and be willing to make changes. And those changes will come in next year. But we got to wrap up a bunch of storylines this year before the new stories can begin. And that's what these next few months will be about. All right. Hopefully, this recording went easily and is uploaded and shared with you as well. And I am just wishing you all an amazing, incredible journey. Don't let things frustrate you this week. Don't get, I like to say, caught up in your underwear, because it is just not going to make a difference. What you try to fight against, it's just going to make it worse. So just be open, be patient, be restful. If you're tired, it's because whether you realize it or not, there is heavy energy working on you and being worked on you behind the scenes that you're not even aware of, but it's for a reason. So give yourself grace, let yourself rest, make sure you're getting plenty of water. And when you have Saturn in a water sign, you definitely want to make sure that you are getting enough water and doing the work with water, with your emotions, controlling your emotions, working on your subconscious thoughts, and letting go of fears. Those things, not staying rigid or stuck in your thinking, those are going to be the people who are open to the opportunities, and those opportunities that are coming will show up faster when you do those types of things and that type of work. All right, I know it's a lot. I'm here as your guide, so let me know how I can be of assistance. Thanks for liking, commenting, sharing my work, and showing up. I truly appreciate you and sharing this journey with you. And we shall talk again next week. May your eclipse journey go well. Take care, everybody.